Here is the full interview I did with Kevin Barbaro. It's obviously you clicked on it, you saw how long it is. So, long interview. Just sit back, maybe do some work while you're listening. It's very entertaining. The first couple minutes are the same as if you watched the show that was released on Tuesday. But after that, we get into lots of stuff about where he's lived, where he's traveled, a lot of acting stuff, and the infamous Bigfoot story and experience that he had in Ohio. So sit back and relax and enjoy the full conversation with Kevin Barbaro. You've led an interesting life. That's an understatement. But it started in, is it New York? Is that where you grew up, in New York?
Yeah. That I was born in New York and then lived in various towns in New York until sophomore year of high school. And then I moved to Vermont and then, went to high school and college in Vermont. So, yeah, most of my childhood was in New York in various towns.
So was there a small town that you remember, or do you remember a particular place that was a lot of small town, folks watch
small town living, bro? Yeah, man. Well, my extended family were farmers. And so I grew up in southwest New York most of my childhood. They call it the Southern Tier. And so kind of like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Jamestown, New York, a historical town, historical significance. So Jamestown, I was about 90 minutes east of Jamestown. And so basically kind of like in that chunk of New York over to the southwest. So yeah, just living in small towns, man. I was born in Olean, New York, and Olean. Interestingly enough, not only was I born there, both of my parents were born there, and my grandparents were born there. And my great grandfather, whom I had the privilege of knowing as a kid, he lived to be 98 years old, and he emigrated to the United States directly from Italy and into Olean. There was a lot of Italians in that area. And so yeah, I have a huge amount of family still in the Southern Tier.
What kind of farming did they do up there?
Dairy farming, hard farming, like any farming, man. Farmers, bro. I got a special spot for farmers, man, because they spend their whole life just trying to break even, man. And it's a tough life. I worked on my uncle's dairy farm in the summertime quite a bit, and you're up at 5 a.m. Milking cows, and then you spend all day baling hay or fixing stuff. Something always breaks on a farm, bro. Every day something's broken on a farm, and then you got to milk again at night, And so we did that, all through growing up. I also worked as a kid in apple orchards, because things like that. So yeah, I grew up with working with my hands for sure.
So Vermont is a place that people don't talk too much about when they start talking about traveling. I mean, obviously it is a beautiful place, and there are certain places where people travel to, but when people think about like vacation destinations, they might talk about New York or Maine, but Vermont is what's Vermont, bro? I've passed through Vermont, but I've never really stopped for an extended stay. What is Vermont like?
Vermont's interesting. There's kind of like a old saying in Vermont, kind of like bumper sticker saying that basically paraphrasing says, "Welcome to Vermont. Now go home." We didn't really like people coming in, and because really there's no easy way to get there. I mean, you've got to cross Lake Champlain if you're coming west to east, or you got to weave your way up through the Berkshires and then up through the Green Mountains. Vermont was a unique place to grow up. Very little crime, and back then, I mean, the world has more crime in general. There's more humans, more crime, but and it was cold, bro. I mean, you grow up. We grew up outside all the time. and it was an interesting place to grow up. I mean, everybody you knew would ski. Everybody knew how to ice skate. Just similar type of upbringing that other kids have in other parts of the country. Only they grow up playing basketball or football. We grow up skiing, snowmobiling, and playing hockey. Everybody plays hockey in Vermont. We would go even in college. We would get a bunch of us. We get like 20 of us, and we'd all pitch in and rent the ice for an hour and just play pickup hockey.
I was just up in Alaska this summer, and people ask like, what's Alaska like? And I say it kind of felt like Canada. Obviously, it kind of is Canada, geographically. In Vermont, do you feel like it's almost like Canada, or is it like its own part of the United States that's separate from the rest of us?
It is. It's an interesting question. That's a great question. And actually, it is similar. Now, I will say this, because it borders Quebec. Now, Quebec is a different part of Canada. Quebec is like Canada on steroids, you know what I mean? Because, French Canadians are different than other Canadians. And as a matter of fact, when you go to Quebec, the street signs are still by law in French and in English. And so as you get closer to the Canadian border in Vermont, as you're heading up towards like St. Albans and Swanton, these are the last towns you get to before you get to the border, it increasingly becomes more like Canada, more farmland, more, and actually a good chunk of the people that live there have French last names. It's not uncommon for you to have a bunch of kids in your school named Leclerc or LaFontaine or, these different French names. But I will say that as soon as you cross the border, you distinctly know that you are in Canada, that you're specifically in Quebec, because just as a quick example, farmland in America, you'll have a farm and it'll kind of, the farmhouse and the farm will usually be kind of centered on the property, roadside. In Canada, all the farms go back. They're narrow and long. It's because they basically go from the road, an access road or a highway, back to a water source. And so as soon as you get into Canada, you recognize that there's a difference in the landscape, even though it's not an actual, most of the border with Canada is just carved out of the woods, and actually you can be on Lake Champlain and you can be close to the border and you can look up east and west and you can literally see the swath that actually is the border. It's cut. So there's not like a bunch of forest. There's a clear path. They grow a lot of weed up there. I'm going to tell you right now.
A little different than the border you hear about on TV all the time. So.
Oh yeah, it's different,
So then you went to college at the University of Vermont. What city was that in?
That's in Burlington.
And how far is that from where you grew up?
Well, I actually
where you were in high school.
High school in South Burlington. So
right there.
As a matter of fact, Gutterson Fieldhouse, which was where our indoor track was and still is, and the dorm that I lived in my freshman year was almost exactly 1 mile from my house, straight uphill, But you could run to it. But a lot of our runs, we'd run right past where I lived, my parents lived, or a lot of runs we'd run right past South Burlington High School, because it was in a different direction, but it was only a couple miles away. So yeah, I was recruited by a lot of schools, and went on my recruiting trips and everything else, and I was determined that I was going to go away to college. And UVM is a Division I school, and I basically had narrowed my choices down that I was either going to go to Division II and play football. I was a good football player. I wasn't great, or I was going to go to Division III and do track and football if possible, or I was going to go to Division I. I was just going to do track, and so I ultimately narrowed it down to UNH and UVM for track, and then I decided just go to UVM. I loved it, man. Great school, a lot of fun. You know, probably could have been a better athlete in college than I was. We didn't drink so much, but
The Catamounts,
it's Vermont,
right?
man. You know, being honest.
The Catamounts, right?
Yeah.
What's a catamount?
What's that?
What's a catamount?
Catamount's like a mountain lion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, almost exactly. You know, there are two colleges that are catamounts.
I don't know the other. No.
Western Carolina.
Oh.
Yeah, Western Carolina Catamounts and the University of Vermont Catamounts. But yeah, it's essentially a mountain lion. So, yeah.
Was that I'm guessing that's in that area. There's mountain lions up there.
There are mostly not where UVM is, but it actually so University the reason why they're called the Catamounts actually goes back to the Green Mountain Boys, and Ira Allen and Ethan Allen. I don't know if you're familiar with the Green Mountain Boys, but Green Mountain Boys was. I've actually been working on a movie script for years about this called Green Mountain Boys. The Green Mountain Men, I should say, were it was its own militia. Vermont had its own militia, and actually Vermont's militia, the Green Mountain Men, they would meet at a bar. Fittingly, this is the 1700s. They would meet at a bar in Brattleboro, Vermont, which Brattleboro is down near the New York, Massachusetts, Vermont trifecta there. Bennington, Vermont, and it was called the Catamount. That was the name of the bar, and the University of Vermont was actually founded by either Ira Allen or Ethan Allen, one of the two boys, but they were brothers. And when during the Revolutionary War, the British were going to take over Fort Ticonderoga in New York on Lake Champlain, and the Green Mountain Men actually helped defeat the British and helped us ultimately win the war. And or we'd still be speaking British right now, I guess. But yeah, that's the genesis of the reason why the UVM is called the Catamounts. And UVM, people always wonder why it's UVM. You know, how do you land on that acronym? But it's the Latin. It's the actual name of the school is the University of the Green Mountains, and so that's the Latin word. It's like, I'm gonna butcher this, but it's like Unis Verdis Montis, UVM, University of the Green Mountains.
I just figured they were trying to, spell it out halfway like an abbreviation or something.
Yeah.
Just
pop off the vowels or whatever. Yeah.
So did I read that you also went to school in South Carolina for maybe a bit? Is that right?
Yeah. So after UVM, so I used up my eligibility, didn't graduate yet, still just trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, do as an adult. And so I just kind of like on a whim, which is how I do most everything in my life, I decided to transfer to Coastal Carolina. And so I went to Myrtle Beach like on vacation, basically. And I was like, man, this is a place, it's Myrtle Beach, bro. And particularly back then in the early 90s, man, Myrtle Beach was, that was a party town. It was all the nightclubs and dance clubs and wet t-shirt contests and everything else you can think of. You're a young 20-something guy. Why wouldn't you? And so I contacted the coaches at Coastal, and I said, I really would love to become a college coach. And so my first year, I finished my degree, and so I was like a student assistant, the first year, where you're in your fifth year, but you don't have any eligibility left. And then I ended up becoming a college coach, and the rest was history at that point.
And so in our last podcast, we talked a lot. We talked about track and coaching. And you were at Coastal, you were at Columbia,
yeah,
and Toledo. Was there anywhere else?
So very briefly, at one point when I was at Coastal, I was going to go to Georgia State University to be an assistant. This was when my son was born. His mom and we never got married, but she lived in Atlanta. So I was going to move to Atlanta and, be a dad. And, I was going to coach at Georgia State. I was actually hired at Georgia State as an assistant. And, but then, life happens and we split up. And so I contacted my buddies at Coastal, and they were like, yeah, come on back, so it was like just a brief interject. Most people don't even realize that I coached there for like 2 months, and but so I don't even really ever bring it up, but yeah, I was there for 2 months.
So in the non-coaching part of that time at those schools, were there any trips, any track meets, or any places you went recruiting that you remember that were really unique or fun, or that, memories that stick in your head? I mean, we went to, obviously, when you're running, you go to the pin relays and run as a kid. That's something, or like going to California for the first time I went to California for a track meet.
Yeah.
And obviously as an athlete and a coach, you go all kinds of places for business reasons.
Yeah.
But anything that stuck in your mind at any of those places that was just a blast of a trip?
From the Coastal years?
Any of those years?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, from the Coastal years, we had a lot of fun, bro. I mean, it's because everybody on our staff, we were best friends, man. It's similar to what you experienced. And they're still, to this day, they're my people. And every track meet, every road trip was unique and fun. And but similarly, I got to go to a lot of places that I had never been before. Where I remember, like going to Gainesville for the first time, and you're in Gator country. And one thing that I don't know, I'll give you the PG-13 version of this. I'm in my first experience in Gainesville ever, and we're standing at a stoplight, and there's like a student dorms, or I don't know what kind of. It was like an apartment building. I guess it was students. I don't know. And we'd only been in town for like 10 minutes. And I'm sitting in the passenger seat of the van, and I'm just kind of looking at this building. And all of a sudden, and I don't know how I even saw it, because there had to be 200 windows there, but there was this black lady lifts up her shirt and flashes her jimmies at me. And I don't know. And at first I'm like, did anybody else see that? And my buddy's driving. He's like, dude, did you just see that? And I'm like, how did we see that? And was she doing it to us? So we went like this, and she was doing it to us. I was like, man, Gainesville, bro. This is gonna get fun.
Well, Myrtle Beach was fun.
Yeah. Golly.
Okay. So you end up obviously at Toledo, where I'm from, and Ohio. I'm not from Toledo, but I'm from Ohio.
Yeah.
So what were your impressions of Ohio coming from the East or the Northeast? How was it different? And, you've spent quite a few years there. Yeah. I grew up there, so I know what it's like. But for someone that's an out-of-towner, out-of-stater,
Midwest,
what do you remember about living in Ohio?
Well, a lot of things. I mean, I really cherish my time at Toledo. Matter of fact, I was just there 2 weeks ago. And so what happened was I ended up, after Coastal, I was at Coastal for 5 years, and then I went to Columbia in New York City. And I went from Columbia to Toledo. And so I went from, New York City to Toledo, Ohio,
which we're going to come back to New York City here shortly.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that'll be
But yeah, you know what? I love the people, Midwest people, down to earth, you know, meatloaf and mashed potatoes and pie for dinner. It's just it's a great place to raise a family. Absolutely. Like with anywhere, and Toledo's a decently sized city, not huge, but I mean, it's decently sized. But anytime you've got a large population, of course, you're going to have good areas of town. You're going to have bad areas of town. And I actually lived in both while I was there. I mean, there's a part of Toledo called the Old West End, where it's all older. My home, I bought a home that was built in 1906, and it was huge, big colonial home, and there's an entire area section of Toledo that all the homes are like that. They're all from that era. And some parts of it are really nice. Some parts of it are really not. Matter of fact, I remember driving home. I got my kids in the back of the car, and I'm like 3 blocks from my house, but it kind of bordered the bad part of town. Like Toledo's interesting. Like you'll have a really nice street where everybody is homeowners, and it's kept up and everything. Literally 1 block over, and it's destitute, like 1 block. So anyway, I'm like on one of those blocks heading to my house. I see these 2 kids on BMX bikes. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It's like 10 o'clock at night, and there was like a UPS truck going this way, and I slowed down because I didn't want the kids to cross over and not see me. So the UPS truck passes me, and I kind of slow down. And the kids are on their BMX bike right next to my window. Dude pulls out a revolver and starts firing down the road. I got my kids in the back, bro. I'm just like, kids are like, Uncle Kevin, what's going on? Because I raised my sister. Uncle Kevin, what's going on? Oh, nothing. They're just playing around. Those are toy guns. Yeah, I get to the house. I call the cops, I go back out there 20 minutes later. The cops show up. 20 minutes, bro. And then they give me a hard time because I'm, they're like, what? I asked them what they were there for. They're like, what's it to you? Okay, I get it, But anyway, that's a bad story about me. but no, it's beautiful. Lake, being on the lake is great. I go back every year. I go deer hunting. I'm gonna go back up for gun season, and Vermont is
different kind of gun season.
What's that?
Different type of gun season.
Yeah, exactly. And I just was on a podcast last week because I actually have a Bigfoot experience, and which is a real life Bigfoot experience
in Toledo.
When I was living in Toledo, but it actually happened in southeast Ohio when I was hunting. I was hunting in it's like what's it called, Muskegon State Forest.
Yep. I'm familiar. So I'm from basically like you have southwest Ohio, Cincinnati. Southeast Ohio is like Athens. I'm from right in the middle, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I went for early muzzleloader season, which is 2 days, and I had a real Bigfoot experience, and so I was on a podcast about supernatural stuff like a week ago.
You got to give us some version of the story then.
I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of it, bro. I don't know how much time you got, but basically shortening it as much as I can while still giving you the full effect of it. It was early muzzleloader season. So a muzzleloader is an actual black powder gun, cast iron black powder gun where you put you have a ramrod. It's like a musket, basically, only it's not. It's a rifled cast iron gun. It's actually incredibly accurate, but you only have 1 shot. And so some deer seasons and gun seasons in Ohio, they have what's called early muzzleloader. So anybody that's hunting that weekend can only use a muzzleloader, 1 shot. Okay. And the only places you can do it are either on your own private land or in one of 2 state forests where it's open to public hunting. Is it called Muskegon? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. State Forest. And then there was another state forest. So I decided, because I had never hunted down at that one, I was going to go there. And so I scoped it out on Google Maps about where I was going to go. I went down there the day before. I drove around, and it's just like logging roads, man. I mean, it's like desolate down there. Matter of fact, like these roads don't have names. They're not even state roads. They're just like numbered.
Right.
It'd be like road 1, you know. It's like you're just following a dirt road, you know. And it winds its way through, and you'll even see like little pockets of like 4 or 5 1950 style trailers that, like, I don't even know if the government even knows that these people are there. You know, it's on this in the middle of nowhere in the forest, you know, public land. There's living there, you know. So I'm driving around trying to find where I'm going to go. I saw on Google Maps that there was a little parking space. And so I found the parking space that I was looking for. It was off of like a main road, you know, two-lane road. And so I get there, I park. It's about a 1/4 mile walk into the woods on like a pretty primitive path. And at the end of it, it kind of splits off, and there was a big oak tree, you know, right at the head of this 3-way path, right? And I could see different. I could see where there had been deer there before. There's deer runs where you can see where they walk through. You can see deer poop. You can see scrapes because they scrape their antlers, and it's mating season. You know, hunting is around the mating season, and so I'm like, okay, well, this is where I'm going to go. Okay, so I decide the next morning I'm going to get there 2 hours before dark because you can only hunt sun up to sundown, basically. And but you got to get there early, or else the deer are going to hear you. They're going to see you or smell you, you know. So I get there the next morning, bro. Dude, it is pitch black. I mean, like, there's no ambient light at all. There's no civilization. There's no anything. There's no ambient sound. I mean, it's just like darkness. And once I left my truck, I could only see like literally like 2-3 feet in front of my face. You can't see anything. There was cloud cover, so you couldn't even see the moon. Like, dude, it was pitch black. Now, I've hunted since I was a kid. I've got a cuckoo switch, man. I am one of these people that doesn't really. I'm not afraid of anything. Now, I've been scared before. Everybody's been scared, but being scared and being afraid are two different things. You know, being afraid, you're scared ahead of time. You're scared about something that hasn't even happened yet if you're afraid, you know. I'm not, I have no fear. I'm not afraid of it. But I'll be scared, you know. But so anyway, being in the woods in the dark, no big deal, bro. I ain't got no problem, right? So, but the caveat is that legally you're not supposed to even load your gun until the sun comes up, okay? Until you can actually shoot something, because in the eyes of the law, why do you need a loaded gun if you're not allowed to fire it? But here's the deal. I decided I was going to load the gun when I could see what I was doing. So I'm at the truck, you know. So I load my gun, but I don't put the flintlock in it. So I don't put, you know, the actual charge. So I can just put that in real quick, and boom, and I can fire the gun. So I've got it loaded, but it's not fireable. I make my way to the tree, which took forever. I sit down at the oak tree, and, you know, the sun's not going to come up for another hour and a half, right? So I fall asleep, which is normal. Like, if you're a hunter, like, that's what you do. You get there early, you know, you're out, you know. And so, dude, I wake up, I hear something, you know. But the thing about being in the woods at that hour, when there's no ambient noise, everything is distorted. You can't tell depth because you can't see. So you have no perception of how far away something is. The sound travels like crazy because there's no ambient noise, right? So, and something that sounds really big could actually be something really small. Like I've been in a deer stand before, and I'll hear something, and I'll be like, Jesus, that sounds like a monster, you know? And I'll slowly turn around, and dude, it'll be like a squirrel, you know, And I would have sworn on my life that it was like some big buck, you know. So anyway, I hear something. So I'm like, okay, you know. So I pull my coat. I got my phone in my coat, so I look to see what time it is. I got like an hour and a half, you know. I'm like, well, maybe it'll just stick around, you know. So I just sit there. I don't say anything, and it continues to walk. I can hear it. You know what I mean? So this goes on for like 30 minutes, bro. I mean, it goes on for like a long time. Whatever this is just hanging out. It doesn't know that I'm there. And I can tell that it's getting closer to me, but I can't tell how far away it is. Okay. I can't tell anything about it, although I can hear it, you know. So it's getting closer to me, and it's getting to the point where it's only about 50 yards from me. My perception was that that's how far away it was. And then I start thinking to myself, I feel like it's on 2 feet. I feel like this is something that's walking with 2 feet, the way I can hear it making its way around, you know. So then I'm like, crap, you know, it's another hunter. You know, in my head, I'm like, it's another hunter, you know. And so kind of like etiquette in the hunting world. I don't know if you've ever hunted before, but you know, if you're
No.
there, okay, so if you're there in the dark, you know, kind of the etiquette is that the person that's there first is kind of like their area, you know what I mean? And so in order to not shoot each other, you know, you want to kind of let the other person know you're there, you know, but you don't know that it's another person. You think it's another. So I think it's another hunter. So in the world of hunting, basically what you do, because you don't want to alert the animal kingdom that that you're there. You know what I mean? So essentially, it's kind of like this unwritten rule that, like, if somebody's near you and you can't see each other, you just whistle like a bird really quick, and then the other person would mimic that sound back. So if I went, then I would wait, and then the other person would try to mimic it, and then it's another human. You know what I mean? So anyway, it's starting to get closer. It's still like a lot of time, you know, and so I'm thinking it's another person. So I'm like, all right, so I'm gonna whistle, and let this dude know that I'm here. So I'm sitting there. I got my gun, and I'm just sitting down by the tree, and I can hear this walking. At this point now, I feel like it's really close. You know what I mean? And so I make the decision, right? And I can hear it shuffling, and I go, and it stops. I don't hear anything back. And I'm like, maybe the dude's waiting for me to do it again just to be sure that that's what he heard. So I go, and bro, at that moment, man, all hell broke loose, man. So whatever it was, I whistled the first time and it stops. I whistled the second time, and all of a sudden, this thing's going back and forth, and it's like breathing really hard, and it's like shuffling back and forth, and I can hear, dude, my heart. I'm going lactic, just sitting there, bro, and I'm petrified. I've never been more scared in my whole life. I'm just sitting there, and all of these thoughts are running through my head, like, what is this? You know what I mean? And it went on for what seemed like forever, but in all reality, it was probably like 15 seconds. You know what I mean? And during this time, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to shoot this. I'm going to shoot it. But I don't have the flintlock in. You know what I mean? So then I'm thinking, if this thing comes close to me, I'm just going to turn the gun around. I'm just going to start swinging it like a baseball bat. Like, this is what's going on in my head. You know what I mean? So and then it stops. And bro, it lets out a yell. Now, listen, man, I've heard every animal on the planet before. I've heard, all kinds of animals, wolves, coyotes, everything, right? It lets out a yell, and I'm not going to do it as loud. It was so loud and guttural, and dude, and we're talking feet from me, okay? I felt it through my entire body, and what it sounded like, and this is not even remotely close to how loud it was, but it was like, even longer than that. And I'm just frozen, bro. I couldn't move. I couldn't move an inch. And then I heard it. There was a hill there, and I heard it run up the hill, and it stops at the top of the hill, and it lets out another yell, the same yell. Dude, I didn't move an inch, bro. I sat there in just complete silence, completely frozen, and I didn't move an inch until it was light enough for me to move. And I went over, and you could see where it all had been scratched up and everything, right? And it was only like 50 yards from me. It was not very far away, 150 feet maybe, right? And I couldn't see any footprints. All I could see was just where it was all disrupted, right? I left. I was like, man, I'm out, right? I didn't even hunt. So fast forward over a year. So fast forward to December of the next year. I'm homesick. I rarely get sick, but when I do, man, it's a big one, right? I'm homesick. I don't even go to practice, right? This is 2010. And I'm watching TV. I'm just, eating chicken soup and watching TV, and I'm watching History Channel, which is what I normally watch. And they had the show Catching Bigfoot, was a popular show on History Channel. So I'm watching the show, and, I'm not even thinking about my experience. This is over a year later, you know what I mean? So I'm sitting there, I'm watching it, and they're talking about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, etc. Apparently, there are more Bigfoot sightings in Ohio than anywhere else in the world. Okay? And along the Ohio River there, they have what's called the Grassman. And the Grassman is the Ohio Bigfoot, essentially, and it lives in these marshy areas. That's where it's been sighted for years. People have seen it. And essentially looks like every other Sasquatch, only it looks like he's got grass growing on him, right? So anyway, on this Catching Bigfoot, they're in Southeast Ohio. They're there. And they're on the Ohio River. And anyway, it's a team of researchers from the University of Cincinnati. And so I'm fascinated. I'm just watching it, right? They show how there's like these lean-tos in the swamp. There's like these trees that have been uprooted and slammed upside down into the deep mud, almost like a marker. And maybe it's humans messing around. Who knows? You know what I mean? But it's odd. It's, there's no explanation for it. So then they set up these night vision goggles, and they're sitting on like this hill, and there's a big swamp down there, and they say they're going to play what they believe is the female version of like the mating call of this Grassman. And bro, they played the sound, and it was the sound I heard, bro. It was that sound. Dude, I'm sitting there in bed. I start sweating like profusely. Yeah, heart rate's like, Again, I'm going lactic, man. The calf is locking up because my body is out of control. So I contacted one of the professors from the University of Cincinnati. He's got a book called The Grassman. And I told him what happened. And obviously I didn't see it, whatever it was. And they don't know for sure that that's what that sound is. But whatever that sound was, bro, I met that thing in the woods, and it could have eaten me right there, bro. Nothing I could have done about it. So that's my Bigfoot story, man. Dude, I'll never forget that sound, bro, ever in my life.
Sounds like a sequel to 127 Hours.
Yeah, literally. No, seriously, man. You know what it was? You know what I thought it was at the time? I don't know if you remember this. You were probably at Kent State at the time. Or no, maybe so, yeah. But remember, there was like in Ohio, in eastern Ohio, there was a dude that had like a petting zoo of exotic animals. And he offed himself. But before killing himself, he opened up all the animal gates. And all them animals got out, and they had to freaking shoot them all. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking in my head that what I saw was like an orangutan or something that got out of this dumbass's, zoo when he let them all out before he offed himself. And it's just running around loose in the woods somewhere. That's what I thought it was. Man, maybe it is. Who knows, man?
Wow, what a story.
That's my Ohio experience, bro.
All right, yeah, that's some good Ohio stuff. All right, we got to get this back on track.
Yeah, get on track. I told you that was the story.
Coaching. Okay, so you move on from coaching and head, which is another fascinating story. Obviously, starting acting, and one of the places you lived was your car.
Yeah, 18 months, bro.
So I don't talk to too many people that lived in their car trying to make it as an actor. What's it like to live in your car?
You know what, bro? It ain't as bad as it sounds. I'm gonna be honest with you. You know what I mean? Like,
some people live in like their van, they'll travel, but that's like part of the plan, kind of.
Yeah,
Not
small, little house type stuff. You know. So I had a Chevy HHR, which was like a boxier version of a PT Cruiser. The back seats folded down, and it's a hatchback, and so. It was exactly large enough so that I could put a single bed back there. So I had, basically what I did was I had 2 large cushions from a couch, okay? And I put those on one side, back to back, and then I put like a comforter over it and a pillow, and that was my bed. That was on one side, right? Like on the driver's side. On the other side, I would have like my bags, my book bag and my duffel bag or whatever, and that's where I would sleep every night. And it was one of those things where like when my coaching career ended, which was an entire episode on its own, infamously.
We talked about that. We talked about that in the other episode.
Yeah. So, I lost everything, and I had to start my whole life over from scratch, and I made the decision I was going to be an actor. So I moved to New York City, but I didn't have anywhere to live, so I lived out of the car. So I would park on Riverside Drive. So in Manhattan, there are 2 places where you can park for free. Riverside Drive, which basically goes from like 114th Street, pretty much down to like 70th on the west side, right by the West Side Highway. So you're talking a good stretch of a few miles where you can park on either side, and it's free if you can find a spot. And then on Central Park, you can park along Central Park West. It's free parking. And so if you can find a spot, what I mean? So I would park my car and I would sleep in it. I made it through 2 winters. And you know what? I never felt nervous or, like the windows were tinted. So nobody would really even know that I was in there in the first place. But in the wintertime, bro, it got cold, man. I mean, there was some brutal cold nights, but like I say, I'm an outdoorsman. So I actually had a sleeping bag in the winter that was tempered for like 40 below. It would be something you would take, hunting and camping. And so I would actually be pretty warm, pretty comfortable in there, just breathing the cool air. And, but I'd be warm in the sleeping bag. And I'd wake up in the morning and the windows would be iced over on the inside from my body heat, and, it was just out of necessity, but really I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it at all. I slept like a baby every night. And really there's just something about, I'm the kind of person where I'm a unique personality. I think anybody that knows me would say that. I am really outgoing. But I'm like an introverted extrovert. The average person would think that I'm an extrovert because I'm always friendly and, always good for a conversation, meet new people. But really, I kind of cherish my time alone too, and I can be alone for days and I don't even think twice about it. I'm perfectly fine in my own skin and just figuring out life or just, just living. So I actually didn't mind living in the car at all. And it wasn't ideal, but I wanted to become an actor. and I was going to do whatever it took to put myself in a position to be successful. Just like with anything in life, you've got to make sacrifices, and you have to identify how to put yourself in a position so that if the basket comes by, you're there to grab something, and that's what I did. I had told myself that I would, because I was living in the car, I could go to any audition. Back then we were doing live auditions. We don't do live auditions anymore, but I was just like, hey man, if I got to go to DC for an audition, I'll just drive. If I so I put over 200,000 miles on that car. It died. Matter of fact, I left it for dead, bro. That's not even hyperbole, bro. I left it for dead. The engine, it got to the point where the engine would just kind of seize up, I mean, HHI wasn't supposed to travel like that,
Right.
And I had to go somewhere. I can't remember where I had to fly to, but the car had kind of just died in this industrial area where the boxing gym that I went to was at. And it was on its last legs, And so I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with it, and I had just started, my own company at that point. So I didn't have a ton of money yet, and I leave, I come back after like a week. I was out in LA or something. I can't remember what it was, but I get car's gone. I'm like, shit, somebody steal the car, and, but I didn't really have anything in it. I'd gotten all my stuff out of it, because it was broken down anyway. I was going to have to get it towed and get it fixed. You know what I mean? So I'm gone for a week. I call the cops. You know what I mean? they had towed it because it was somebody thought that it was abandoned. I was like, oh. So then they told me how much it was going to be for the tow and the storage, and I said, well, see you later. I never went. I never picked it up. I left it for dead. Went and bought a new car.
I've seen a lot of abandoned houses out in the middle of the prairie, but it's a different kind of abandoned house. That's for sure.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. Single person home, bro.
When you were telling your story about that. So I just interviewed a guy a month ago. His name Mike Crowley, who's walking across the country. He's walking across the country.
Nice.
And he just stops under a tree and sleeps for the night, stuff like that. And then he talked about how traveling the country and looking at it that way compared to like driving across is unique. But I was thinking when you as an actor, there's these movies like, or shows like 1883 or something about, the Kevin Costner's got a movie, movie Horizon.
Yeah.
And where they're driving across the middle of the country, just stopping and sleeping under the stars.
Yep.
So do you kind of like, man, I kind of understand what that would be like a little bit. You know what I mean? Like you're not staying in a house. There's no air conditioning.
Yeah.
You're is obviously in a car and a different thing, but those people that were traveling across to try to start a new life, to try to chase a dream, or who knows what was going to be out there in front of them.
Yeah. I would think about that all the time. Like, particularly if I was driving, because I drove back and forth across country many times in that HHR, and there were times where like I would be literally in the middle of nowhere. I mean, in the middle of New Mexico, and you're just on a highway that's just straight, and you literally just pull over to the side of the road. There ain't anybody going to bother you. You know what I mean? If they did, I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, you just kick into survival mode or whatever. Let me tell you something, man. If somebody were to try to attack me, they'd have a big problem on their hands, bro. We're both going down, man. I'm kind of a big dude, man. We're both going down. But I, it was unique in that way because like you're really just kind of pulling over the side of the road, even at a rest stop. You'd be in a rest stop in the mountains or in a valley somewhere or in a desert or I've slept, dude. I've slept pretty much every rest area along the East Coast. And you know what I would do sometimes, bro? What I would do is I would go to like Holiday Inn Express or a Holiday Inn parking lot I just pull into the back, you know what I mean? Because the windows are tinted anyway. And dude, I just camp out for the night. I'd wake up, I'd walk in like I was staying there, you know, walk past the front desk. Hey, how you doing? You know, walk in, grab myself some breakfast, read the USA Today, you know, put my feet up, watching TV. Well, see you later. You know, they didn't know who I was. Dude's making $8 an hour. He doesn't care. You know? And man, I probably, if I always say, like, if I ever make it, you know, make it big time in the world of acting, I'm going to write a check to the shareholders at Holiday Inn Express, because I probably owe them for about 100 meals.
That was some good acting right there.
Absolutely, man. Oh yeah.
So most people, if they've seen you on television, I'm guessing it's probably been in a commercial, correct? Because I've been watching a football game or something, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's Kevin. And then you get a text from somebody's like, hey, I think I just saw Kevin on TV. Maybe that didn't even know that, you know, knew you before you were acting or something. It was like, you know, and so, you know, not too many people I know have an IMDb page, and I was looking through it.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a lot of shows and movies and things that you've been in, but commercials is probably where you've been in the most, right?
Yeah, I would, you know, by far. That, you know, I've actually been really fortunate in that I get cast all the time. I really am fortunate to, you know, for whatever reason, I mean, I kind of have a unique look where, you know, if you see me once and then you saw me later on down the road, you would remember me. It's a memorable, you know, for whatever reason, I have just a memorable look. And I have no discernible accent. So that definitely helps in the world of acting. And, you know, just, you know, again, putting yourself in a position to be successful. But I've been in between local, regional, national, and even international commercials, and magazine ads and billboards and everything else. I've done over the last 12 years, I've done about 400 gigs. And so, and right now it's just, you know, I've just really been lucky and fortunate lately where I have like maybe 4 different national TV commercials that run right now on various, you know, channels. I got a new Napa Auto Parts commercial that run. People every day, somebody's hitting me up. Hey man, dude, I think I just saw you in Napa Auto Parts. Is that you? Yep. And I've got one coming out that starts in October. I filmed it last month in Chicago, and it's for American Family Insurance. So that'll run on pretty much every channel throughout the football season, the rest of the NFL season. And I got one for, it's called Bullseye Pro. It's like a lithium battery operated pump for your car that you know, if you, an air pump. And Fisher Investments commercial, people always would see me on that. So I got a bunch that are just running right now. So most people, if they've seen me, it's a commercial. They saw me in a magazine or whatever. But, you know, I've done TV shows, and I got a film coming out in the next 6 or 8 months or so here with Ja Rule. The movie's called Hoorah 99, and I'm one of the 3 main characters in it. It's a comedy. It's actually a black comedy. I'm the only white dude in the film, and so it's me, Ja Rule, and this other guy, Travis Johnson, who's super funny, great guy, and so I play a pretty I'm shirtless the whole movie except for one scene, you know, just kind of this over the top, you know, overly confident next door neighbor guy, you know, and I'm excited for that. I've seen it, you know, I've seen the latest version of it, and it's funny, man. It's so that'll be a big game changer, I think. So
I know, you know, obviously most people watching here probably don't know much about your, you know, what you're doing. You have a lot of talents, and you've partner in a flooring company. You have an animal rescue, and I can tell you that, and you may not. We don't talk all that much. We keep in contact. But we did hang out about 5 years ago in Myrtle Beach. And it was before I started doing YouTube. But one thing you said to me is probably one of the reasons why I have this YouTube channel. And
Good.
we were, if I don't even know if you remember, we're having a few adult beverages and we were chatting about different things, and you were talking about things that you were doing, and you were doing 3 or 4 different things at the same time, and just made a comment about, like, moving forward, I think it's going to be, you said, I think it's going to be important to have multiple avenues of
You got to
income.
have multiple irons in the fire.
Right. And I've always been a track coach. And so when COVID happened, and I told this story in this channel a little bit, so I won't make it a long story, but when COVID happened, everything got canceled and I was bored to death. And so I started the YouTube channel kind of for something to do. And obviously it's turned into something, but I kind of had a purpose with it. It wasn't just doing it to do it. I had goals, and, and then it's turned in 4 years later. It is, up to this point and growing every day. And so I always remember you talking about that. And now I have these, not only, coaching track still and doing YouTube, but within YouTube, I have merchandise and there's memberships that people, do extra videos for members. And I was like, man, that was some really good advice. And I need to let Kevin know, so everybody's watching can know that, like, he was a big reason why I started this YouTube channel.
Oh man, I didn't, obviously I didn't know that. That's well, I'm glad that I had an impact, because it's true though. You, in this life, and particularly with so much uncertainty in the world and in the country, and the chaos and even organized chaos that happens, you have to protect yourself as a human. And so you have to have multiple avenues. And I've always felt like everybody has multiple talents. You may have a talent that you are able to kind of really work on and perform at the highest percentage of your ability at that talent. But a lot of people, they get sucked into thinking that they only can be good at that one thing because they put all it. But the reality is, if you're successful in something, you have to have other attributes. You have to have other skills that cumulatively got you to that point. And any one of those other skills you can enhance or work on. And, like having my own construction company, I grew up having to fix things. I grew up working with my hands. And as I built my acting career and as I built my construction companies, it's the same basic skills and talents that I had that made me such a successful coach. Being a self-starter, being dedicated, having reasoning skills, people skills, etc. So yeah, I mean, dude, that's awesome that this is working out, because the thing is, I'm more successful now than I'm doing multiple things than I was as a coach. And I was a really good coach. I was really successful. And you'll see the same thing. You've had a lot of great success as a coach. You'll be even more successful because that was only just the tip of the iceberg. Now you can branch out. All those other skills that made you a great coach, they'll make you great at other things, including this and wherever this takes you. And then that'll lead to something else.
Yeah,
I'm happy for you.
without coaching, I would have not traveled so much. I would have never, I wouldn't have known about, like, editing videos and things, because you do that as a coach with film study. And so, yeah, it's interesting how that works out. So we've been going a long time, so I know it's getting close to your bedtime. But my last question for you is, to keep the travel theme a little bit, where have you not been that you want to go?
So I've got a few bucket lists. I've been to 30 different countries, many of them multiple times. And I've been all over the United States, of course, and Canada. But one place that I really want to go that you've been, I know you've been because I watched your videos about it, is Iceland. That's a huge bucket list for me. And I actually want to go to Greenland too. I want to experience that. I'm a really big fan of the Scandinavian countries. Been to Finland many, many times. It's one of my favorite places. And I don't mind the cold, growing up in Vermont, And so, I want to go to Iceland. I want to do what you did, where you guys biked all the way around it. And
So I didn't bike, but I had a camper van, and I just slept in the van. Yeah, but I did the whole ring road. So actually, that was before I did YouTube, and so, but I did videos.
Yeah.
So it's funny because I did videos on post them on Facebook or Snapchat or whatever, and it was like that was like the beginnings of YouTube, of like for me, of
that
like
was
just making
before YouTube.
That was
Man,
before.
I would have thought that was it. Yeah,
every day I made like a 1 minute little highlight of my day in Iceland, and I'd post it on Facebook or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You know what you need to do? You need to see if you can get all of that and make that into an episode, man. Or go back.
That would be something. Yeah, that would be. So
yeah, that's a bucket list. The coolest place I've ever been in my entire life was at the Arctic Circle. I went skiing for a week in Ruka, Finland. There's like a ski resort there where they have like X Games and stuff. By far, the most unique experience I've ever had in my life was going there. So I don't mind the cold. Dude, it was 17 below was the warmest it got while I was there. Negative 55 every night.
So I just went to the Arctic Circle in Alaska, and then I drove to the top of Alaska and jumped in the Arctic Ocean. And that was brutal. But you know, I got a certificate, Polar Bear Club or whatever they call it. So yeah, the Arctic Circle, Arctic Ocean, that was pretty good. Did you jump in the ocean?
No, dude. I went in the wintertime. It was I went skiing.
It's frozen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went in the middle of the summer. It was 35 degrees up there.
35. Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey man, well, thanks a lot. I'll put your, social media. People can follow you.
Yeah.
Very entertaining follow. So you can, anytime that Kevin has something new coming out, he posts it usually. And I'm sure it'll be fun to continue following you. And thanks for the time. Thanks for the stories.
Yeah, man.
Anytime we get to entertaining.
Congrats, man, brother.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, bro. I'll catch you.